All right, welcome back, folks. Today we are going to tackle the front end parts on the mini truck. The upper ball joints, lower ball joints, a couple tie rod ends, and the idler arm. So, show you these parts, we'll get this thing started. So generally on my big trucks, the Land Cruisers, I try to go OEM Toyota as often as I can. But this thing's such a light duty truck that I kind of feel like I can get by okay with some of the options that you can get from Rock Auto that might not necessarily be OEM Toyota. Try to get OEM spec if you can, but pick these up, like I said, from Rock Auto. Mevo Tech. So they seem to be pretty good. Ball joints. It's the idler arm, I'm not sure who made that, if it's a remanufacturer or what, but should hold up. And then of course Moog. I've had not the greatest luck with Moog ball joints on my 100 series Land Cruiser. For that I would recommend going with 555 or OEM Toyota, but we're gonna try the Moog ball joints and hopefully they hold up. Not ball joints, tie rod ends, and hopefully they hold up. Here you've got your lower ball joints that obviously have bigger bolts. Got two of those, and then the upper, a little bit smaller bolts, but they're all greasable. These ones looks like they press in. I'm not sure if these press into this or the or where they press in. We'll find out here shortly when we get to tearing into this. And I should mention that prior to doing any of this stuff on these old trucks, I always try to soak this, even if you can just get it on for half a day or a day, but preferably 2 to 3 days in advance. It makes a huge difference for getting these bolts off and unstuck. I think we'll start with this side since it's sunny out. It's the sunshiny side. We'll start with this one. Hopefully it goes well. We'll switch to the other side. Just discovered upon removal of this wheel that these bearings are either loose or shot. So we're gonna have to get in there, we're gonna have to get this apart and get in there and either tighten those up or replace them. Gonna do some investigation here. Anyways, so prior to the project here, like I said, cleaned off all the grime and gunk, pre-treated these with the PB Blaster, as well as these lower ones. Here we have the idler arm. Okay, so I think that the PB Blaster certainly helped quite a bit because all 4 of these lowers have come off with relative ease, as well as the main nut down below. Now, before we pop those last bolts off, we're going to try to break the ball joint loose out of the tapered hole. And for that, we'll try the big honking hammer here. The only special tool hopefully I'll need for this job is just the pickle fork. We'll see how she does without that first. So, we've got these little pads on both sides there that generally give those a good whack, and that'll loosen that thing up quite quick. Generally try to avoid using the pickle fork, especially if you're going to reuse the boots, because it thrashes the boots, but that's not a problem in our case. But either way, they're just generally not the greatest way to get these things apart. Kind of felt like it broke loose there. There we go. Sure enough. Here we are, it is the next day. And we've done some archaeological digging here. There's all the remnants. I cannot believe how much caked on what must be grease, dirt grease. I mean, it was so thick. It was like out to here, dude. So anyway, that treating of that stuff, those bolts with the PB blaster made a huge difference. Get this last one loose. There we go, no snapped bolts for now. Yeah, you can see these freaking bushings are ancient. The boots, these are certainly the original CV shafts, which says a lot for Toyotas, for just being a 34-year-old truck. But anyway, okay, so we're gonna get this off, and then I'll talk you through what I had to do to get the bottom off. Obviously, before we split the ball joint from the spindle with the use of the pickle fork, and ended up kind of having to keep the top bolts up so that you could jack this thing using the handy dandy onboard tire jack behind your seat in the Toyota pickup to separate the two. Look at that ratty old thing. Okay, so wait until you see what I have to do to this thing. It took me quite a while to get the other side set because these are Chinese made Mevotech Supreme chassis parts. Apparently they're not quite built exactly to spec, so created an enormous nightmare for me yesterday. What should have been about a half hour at most to swap this thing out turned into a 2.5 hour long ordeal, maybe more. But we'll get back to that. As for now, the upper, what we got to do is press in the studs. I think you could probably get away with pounding these in, I'm sure. But I tried it at first, just pressing them in with the vise, and ended up resorting to the newly purchased press. Talk about satisfying. You can see how rusted those things were. Not too terribly bad, but I would hate to even imagine snapping one of these bolts off in there and then having to deal with trying to drill that out. Not fun at all. So I highly encourage you to use the PB blaster, and I'll be honest, every time I've ever used it, it's always seemed to have really done the trick. I mean, I don't know if it's not guaranteed. Depends on how rusty your bolts are, obviously, but it definitely seems to make a huge difference. All right, now we're gonna have to do the same thing we did before with that jack, which is easiest to do if you just turn this. Which is also extra easiest to do if you have both tires off the ground, right? Keep your fingers out of the danger zone. There we go. Now we're halfway there. Sweet deal. Freaking nasty mess. So this area right around here is the problem area. Okay, so obviously make a solid effort to clean off all the surfaces as best you can. Scrape them out, wire brush them off, and bust out the sander. Anyway, what I ran into yesterday was that area up there, that opening. See that teeny little recess in there, little secondary step there from the factory. This newly manufactured ball joint from China apparently does not been cast or machined to accept that. So that's the first problem, is you got to actually fit it up in there, which the other side did not. Maybe I'll get lucky on this one, but I doubt it. And then secondly, somehow the eccentricity, I don't know if that's the right word, it's not in the exact right spot. So one side has to be ground off so that you have the ability to line up the bolt holes. All sorts of fun. Okay, there you have it. It sure ain't pretty. We're gonna have to paint it a little bit, put some anti-seize all the way around it. But yeah, you can tell this end over here had to be shaved down quite a bit to actually fit in the gosh damn hole properly. Absolutely ridiculous. But let's be honest, the rest of the state of this truck, it's lucky it's not in the freaking boneyard at this point. So I only have, what options do I have? I'm kind of stuck out here at work where if I wanted to wait for the parts, you know, how long is that going to take me to do and get? So rather than sending these back, we're just going to make them work. But you can see now, like I said, it will fit. It will actually line up with the bolt holes and that thing will receive it. So sure, I could have had the entire spindle off and tried to ream that out somehow, but this is the best thing we can do. So we're going to paint it and we're going to slap it in there. And so lastly, unfortunately, the new ball joint came with these longer bolts. So you don't have space in that area right there for it to accept it. So have to revert to using 2 of the older, smaller bolts, which is nice because it gives you more space to get the socket in back here. But I'm only gonna get to use 2 of the new bolts. So that's how that's gonna go in. We'll get this thing buttoned up. Then we can move on to the tie rod ends and the idler arm. Tie rod ends out is pretty damn straightforward. Lubricate it as much as you can with the PB Blaster, and you got the adjustment sleeve here, and then you've got your tightening band. So just loosen that up, tap it that way a bit, and then just apply a good bit of oil while you're trying to back that thing out. And it seems to work pretty good. But this truck's gonna obviously have to go in for alignment after all these parts are replaced. But in the meantime, because it's kind of a different manufacturer, I figure just set it up center to center in the middle of the pivot there, and then mark about how many threads down where the old one was in. So that should work. I shortened the stock of the tie rod end because we're going to have plenty of adjustment, but it was too long to fit into the sleeve. I also ground in a little groove in such an angle that would kind of chase these threads out a little bit, chase the rust and gunk out of this thing on its way in. It's probably ideal to try to line up the 2 tie rod ends so that they're not binding and opposing each other. So perpendicular in this case. Grease dirt. In you go. There we go. Moving on to the idler arm. I've seen definitely worse. It's not as bad as I thought it was. We can get out the impact gun and crack those off, hopefully without any problems. Oh, sweet. Look at the condition of those bolts too. Not too bad. Shit, man. They still got the electroplating on them. That is awesome. like you gotta question yourself, am I really barking up the wrong tree here? I mean, like, what am I really trying to accomplish here? Should put all this freaking money into a new truck, but can't seem to let it go. You know, when I was trained how to be a helicopter mechanic in the Army, one of the first things they teach you about is the hardware. And you never turn the bolt and you don't torque the bolt. You always torque the nut for a variety of reasons, but that's the proper way to do it. Hold the bolt, turn the nut. That'll work. It's as tight as they will in the cameras. Okay. They ship it with this funky little plastic cover on here. So down that goes. No grease zerd on this one. All these other ones had it. Not in this case. So we can do this one-handed. Nope, can't do it one-handed. Jesus. Man, we are just about done here. Just about wrapping this project up. Finally, for hell's sake. Good grief. All right, as you can see, we're gonna tighten that thing up, torque it down. And that's it, man. We're gonna take this thing back down, put it on the wheels, and take it down to the alignment shop. Grease up all the zerts. And yeah. So anyway, I don't know if you learned something while you were here today, but hopefully got some of your questions answered, and hopefully it was of some use of your time. So anyway, got a lot more work to do on all these different trucks, so if you're interested, stick around, see what's next. See you on the next one.